managing team relationships, dismantling toxic patterns, and becoming the conscious leader you were intended to be. All this and more right now.
The Remarkable People Podcast. Check it out. The Remarkable People Podcast. Listen, do, repeat for life. The Remarkable People Podcast.
Hey, Marika, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you, Pasqualone?
I am excellent. And for our listeners, you need to absolutely, at the end of this episode, go to Marika's website, check out her content, and learn how to properly pronounce her name. Marika, why don't you say your name for all our listeners with the French accent the proper way, since I'm butchering it? Please forgive me.
Sure. So my name is Marika Messager.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it the right way. And thankfully, she's a very gracious guest. And as you're going to see in this episode, she has a ton of life knowledge and information and experiences we can all glean from. So I'm super pumped to talk to Marika. And Marika, as we go through this episode, our listeners are going to grow in a bunch of ways or have content they can run with and apply to their lives and be better people. But if there is one truth or one concept or one just life-changing application that's going to be in this episode from your life story, what is that our listeners know if they stick through the episode, they're going to get at least that out of the show?
Oh, that's a big question. I would say they will understand why it's important to fight any toxicity or distortion within them, and to bring some understanding and eventually transformation to that which is within them, so that they can be actors of change, of positive change for themselves, for their community, for the world in general. So they will understand why it matters, and they will understand how to do it, and then how to think about the perspective of taking a more systemic intelligence and being able to look at what is distorted within your own system and the system in general, and what can be changed in order to create better individuals, as we all are, but also better organizations and a better system for all.
Yeah, and that's what we need. I don't care if you're from America, the UK, Australia, any country in the world. We all need better systems, right? They've been polluted with greed and all sorts of different corruption. So for us to become better, for our families to become better, our communities to become better, our states, our countries, the world, this is an amazing topic. So before we get into the details, let's talk about your upbringing. Where were you born? What was your upbringing like? What were the things that made you the woman you are today?
Oh, that's a long story. So I grew up in Paris, and I grew up in a very privileged environment. I grew up in an area of Paris, which is the 7th arrondissement, which is, quite a high level social environment. And I was an only child to my parents, who were 41 and 42 when they had me, which I'm 47. So which at the time was quite different in a way already. And I went to a semi-private Catholic school that only had girls at some point. And so I had a kind of very privileged Catholic within the system education, where I did very well because I was very good at school. I had loads of friends. And so I was able to learn about that system and navigate it very well.
Nice. Now,
And
with your
then
parents,
I grew up.
Go ahead.
No, because I don't know how far this is my upbringing until I started working really. But maybe I have to say that within that upbringing, there was always a lot of experiences that were mind expanding. So I traveled a lot with my parents. We went to, to Thailand. We went to Israel. We went to, Bali. So I saw the world. I saw how to function in the world, and also how to maybe be street smart, but appreciate the differences, culture differences. And then I traveled a lot by myself. So I'm talking about travel, but it's maybe to depict the personality of somebody who is on a quest to learn and discover and explore what is there to be explored.
Yes, and as you traveled as a child, I mean, a lot of times we don't appreciate it until we're older. When we look back, as you were traveling as a child and you're seeing the different cultures, when was it that you realized that, man, there's some serious differences, but there's a thread of commonality?
Yeah, I think the first experiences I had was when I was probably very young. I was 9 or 10. My parents were working. They had their jewelry business, and they didn't have much time, and they were working together. So a lot of holidays I was sent somewhere. And July was the month where I was sent to kind of in a summer camp in a way, but they had a purpose of me learning English. So I started at 9, 10, 11. So I went to some places in Belgium, in Switzerland, and then I went to America when I was 12. And so this is really where I discovered, and especially when I was in the States, because they have rituals and rules. And so I really discovered the American system and what it meant to, educate a child in the States that was different in France, and where, because I could see some patterns already where all the French kids were kind of getting together, and they were like maybe 15% of the whole summer camp, but they were the kind of always the ones who were like, making trouble and breaking the rules. So I started to think about those patterns, and then I guess I lived in New York when I was 18, which was no, maybe 20, I think, which was very transformative for like 5 months. I was doing an internship, but I also saw the American culture, I mean, the New York way of life. So it's been a continuous exploration, really, and understanding. But also, then I worked in finance for 15 years, and I was managing a team of 40 people across Europe and the Middle East. So, that also really amplified my understanding that, we're all human beings, but we have been programmed in many different ways. And, what is the program? What does it mean? And what are the good things about the program, the bad things about the program, and there is good and bad in every program, in every culture, in every society. So yeah, if that answers the question.
Yeah, no, there's no right or wrong. It's just we're just looking through your life, seeing what made you who you are today. And then as you're growing up and as you're developing as a person, any highs, any lows, anything in between that you feel significant to bring us to today and then where you're heading, that's all we're here for. And our listeners are interested in growth and knowing the practical steps of what you achieved or overcame and how you did it so they can too. So you're doing great. Now, once you're seeing these patterns and you're seeing different cultures and different obstacles, what does your mind and what starts developing your life once you start observing these patterns?
So I think I'm somebody who has always been resolution oriented. And so that has been shaped in me through my upbringing as well, and what I've been exposed to. So I've been exposed to toxicity in my family, toxicity in some of my relationships. So I really developed what we called a codependent syndrome or a savior syndrome or a parentified child, but basically somebody who puts their needs away and focuses on the needs of the other or the others in order to avoid conflict and create a peaceful environment, right? So it's with that which was initially an inherited pattern, right? And was a part of this, it was something distorted within me. But that actually, really supported me to amplify my empathy, right? And my ability to feel things and to sense things. Because when you're in toxic environments, it's a survival mechanism, like sensing every body language move or, different sense of tone. Like basically you learn to feel the intentions of others in order to stay safe and to take the actions that will be necessary for you to stay safe. So, it's with that, program in mind that I was always seeking resolution, but at the same time, very strong in my sense of self. So, I can fight, with words and all of that. But seeking resolution, I always wanted to understand where everybody was coming from. And so, if we have a team with different, genders, nationalities, races, religions, all of that, I was always, trying to really understand where they were coming from and what was I was searching for the good intention in whatever they were saying, right? So how can I see through some of the ego patterns, some of the defense mechanisms, and understand them, so that I can actually access the good intention. And from that place of good intention, can we actually create a resolution? So I think this is what I've learned by, exposing myself to so many different systems, and coming from, who I am, which is somebody who, fights for the good fight. Fights the good fight.
Yeah, and that's so important. And to say, when you're trying to figure out what's motivating people and what they're thinking and to understand them, what have you found the best approach? So say our listeners now are in a team environment, and whether they're the quote unquote leader, you can still be the leader. What are the ways that you could navigate a group of, 12, 15 people and isolate the difficult ones and cut to the core so you all find the commonality? What techniques do you use?
Truth, honesty, right? So what it really means to get to the core of somebody's intention is to really get to the core of somebody's intention, right? And so the more manipulative people are, the more they will hide their true intention. So you have to seek the truth, right? And this is part of being a warrior of the truth. You have to go and seek it. So you have to ask questions. You have to pay attention. You have to look at the actions, right? See if there is alignment between the thoughts, the words, and the actions. So you need to pay attention to all the parts within your team that could be toxic or distorted, right? And you need to bring some light to that and see if you can transform that toxic pattern into something that is actually benevolent. And if two people are conscious, we all make mistakes, right? We live in a system that, is based on foundations that are distorted. So we've all been programmed. We all carry that toxicity within us. But if we commit to, working against it, right? If we commit to stop tolerating those distortions and create something that is win-win, that is benevolent, then we can have conversations together, right? We can say, this is what I'm observing. This is what I feel. This is what I need. Can we meet there, right? But we can have a conscious conversation. The less people are conscious, the more that conversation is going to be difficult, because some defense mechanisms are going to be triggered, and you will have an ego conversation rather than, a higher consciousness conversation. So it's that, but in order to have those conversations and in order to seek the truth, we need to be conscious. So we need to be able to see our truth, to see the truth of the situation. We need to be able to accept it, to receive it. And the more we are aware of all the unconscious mechanism within humanity, because to be honest, there are some similar patterns. So the more you are educated on that, the more you can see them within yourself, within others, and you can actually work with yourself and with others in order to dismantle those negative, those toxic patterns.
So taking, I kept thinking about the Bible when you were talking, how it talks in first, all over the Bible, but in First John specifically, it talks about taking everything into the light. Like you said, where's the truth? Bringing it to the light, being totally open and transparent with each other, right?
Yeah.
So as you're taking into the light, you can only go as far as someone is willing to open up. Like you can use every technique in the world, but if somebody's going to lie, if somebody's going to deceive, that's
Yeah.
as far as they can go. In that situation, what's your recommendation? So, you don't want that cancer to spread throughout the team. How do you handle
Yeah.
those individuals?
Yeah, and thank you. That's a great question. And I think the first skill that we need to develop is to be able to discern those people quick, right? And for me, it's a matter of seeing patterns. So if somebody is going to make a mistake, right, my role as a conscious leader and as the CEO of my business is going to shed light on that, right? And I see how they respond. If they are honest about it, then that means change of behavior and we can continue to grow together. I'm going to monitor, but we can grow together. If there is dishonesty, I'm going to observe it, I'm going to note it, right? And then I'll see if the pattern is going to continue to grow. If there is a second time, it's a pattern, right? So I'm going to question it again, because what really happens is that we can make mistakes, but when we do it like 3 times in a row, it's not a mistake, it's a choice. So my role in this is to identify whether somebody is making a mistake, lacks the honesty to take ownership of it, or is actually consciously making a mistake and not owning it because, that's better for them, right? Once we have identified those people, to be honest, they're not people we want to be working with because everything is going to be difficult, right? The core values are not common. If they operate from dishonesty, lack of integrity, and there is no way you're going to agree on a process and come to resolutions when you have challenges or opportunities. Our core values dictate how we do things. So we are never going to be able to do things in a way that is aligned. So it's just going to be a problem to manage, right? Sometimes we have to keep those people, but if we have to, we really have to question ourselves, like, really, why do I think I need to keep that person? Because, we tend to stay with comfort zones, and sometimes we think people are irreplaceable, and sometimes we're just overwhelmed by the idea of going through the whole process of replacing that person, right? But if for whatever reason, and it's a strategic reason, that person needs to stay, then we have to manage that relationship, because we know that relationship is not going to flow. There is going to be resistance, there is going to be some hiding, there is going to be some gray areas, and ultimately there is going to be a lack of performance. The potential of the performance of the role is not going to be honored. If we have to manage that, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. There was a
Yes.
delay in the connection.
Yeah.
I was saying that makes total sense. Total sense.
Yeah. And before to finish on that, I want to say, if we have to manage that relationship, we have to manage it with truth, right? So truth is going to be the anchor of the light. And so we have to be very clear in our communication. It has to be written, so there is trace. We have to be very clear with the way we give tasks or projects or, feedback, everything, right? Deadlines, like everything needs to be very structured, so that there is no room for emotional manipulation, basically.
I like that term, emotional manipulation. That's so true. So true. Okay. So you're growing up, and we kind of jumped ahead into concepts, but you start traveling, you go to New York on an internship. From New York, where does your life go, Marika?
So from New York, I come back to Paris, and I finish my studies. And after finishing my studies, I studied finance and economics, and I did like a master's degree. And after that, you have to do a year of internship to, basically get yourself ready to work. And it was really hard for me to choose what I wanted to do because I kind of wanted to do everything. I was very good in math. I was very good in communication, in languages, and I was very interested in by business in general. So it was like hard to put me in one job because I was like, oh, but I'm gonna miss out on so many things. Anyway, I found an internship with Xerox, who is a global brand, and at my time, which some time ago, it was one of the best school for marketing, right? Or sales. Everybody was like, if you go there, you're gonna learn. Like basically it's the school where they teach you to sell, printers and all of that. But like an Eskimo you would sell some ice cream to an Eskimo. So I went there, and I was an intern. I was an assistant of the marketing boss of an area in Paris, and I started to work with the salespeople, and that's when I discovered my market intelligence. Because basically, I was responsible of maybe 15 products, and I did all the market intelligence for all the products so that they knew what they were selling and where they were better than the competition and where they were not as good. And so I learned very quickly how to sell, and how to sell in a way that is honest and sell with this is my offer. This is the value that it has. This is the price. We can have a conversation about the competition, but basically I learned to build certainty and solidity to a product so that you can go to market and feel confident and aligned with your product. And after that, I was like, I'm gonna get bored in this industry because I kind of, it's a bit of the same all the time. Then I tried to work with my parents for 3 months, and they had a jewelry business, and I knew a lot about it because when I was younger on holidays, the whole month of August, I was with them, and many years they were doing a show a jewelry show in Monaco in France. And so I was with them for the whole month. So I was going to the dinner parties, and I was kind of selling jewelry as well. So I was very interested in the creative and beauty process of it as well. So I tried to work with them for, I think, 4 months. And I realized that it was not going to work for me, that, I was going to die if I do that. I realized that I would, barely have a voice in the business, that I would have to compromise and deny my power all the time, that it would be very toxic. So I was like, I need to do something. And I spoke with a very great girlfriend of mine, and I was like, I don't know what to do. And she said, oh, there is this friend of my husband. He has this financial services company in Paris, in Trocadero. He's doing very well. You should meet him. I said, okay. And then 2 days later, I was in the office and of this guy, and Philippe, and he said to me, what can you do? What's your background? And then he said, oh, okay, great. You can be an intern in the analyst, like a research department, and we're actually looking for somebody. So let me ask the guy. So he called my boss, and he came, and after 5 minutes, he was like, okay, do you want to start tomorrow at 6 a.m.? Like, okay. And that's it. And I came back home, and I was like, okay, so I've landed like a long-term internship in a brokerage, equity brokerage industry, like firm. And I have to go there at 6 a.m. and I have no idea what they do. And that's how I started my career in finance.
Now, let me ask you a question. In America, 6 a.m. is pretty early to start. Is that common in your region of the world, or was that even uncommon where you're from?
No, it was crazy where I'm from. Like in Paris, business starts at 9.
Okay. So
No,
this
it
was
was crazy. Yeah. But that happens when you work on the trading floor because the markets are open all the time. So that was part of the fun, to have to be there at 6 a.m. And it was, and I need a lot of sleep.
Yeah. So where does your life go from there? You get this long-term internship, crazy's about to begin. Where does it go
And
from
so
there?
I get this internship. I found it very interesting, but it's like I didn't know anything about finance and the financial markets. I mean, barely. I was not one of these person who dreams about being a trader. But it was very fun bunch of people, and very intelligent, very inspiring. And it was a lot of fun. So I remember my boss gave me like 4 or 5 annual reports of Usinor, which is the Arcelor, which is the steel company. And he said to me, okay, why don't you put all the numbers in the spreadsheet? And I was like, whoa, okay. And I didn't know how to do it. So, I was asking questions. I had a friend who was doing this job. I said, I need to see you. But I really learned the job on the job. And it was very stimulating. And so I did well, and I managed to get hired as a junior equity analyst, and then I became a more senior analyst. And then I moved to a sales role in another company. And then I became head of my desk in another company, and then I became head of equities for Europe and Middle East for New Edge, which now belongs to Societe Generale. So I was 34 when I got that promotion.
Very nice. And then during all this, I'm sure it's like a fire hose of information going in your brain, but you're learning, you're growing, you're jumping companies and positions, and everything's going well professionally. What's going on in your personal life at this time? Are you thriving? Are you struggling? What's happening?
It's like chaos. So when I was 28, I had a boyfriend in Paris, and we had been together for 2 years, and we were like very in love, and wanted to build together. And so I had a conversation with my parents, and to basically ask them to help me buy a flat with him. And but I was willing to take a mortgage. It was just, and they always had told me like, we'll help you, but that became a crazy conversation that was quite violent, verbally, emotionally. And it was a big awakening experience for me, because my world was completely falling apart. It's like, I don't understand. I basically started to discover cognitive dissonance, because I was like, I don't understand what they're saying now and how they're showing up now. It doesn't make any sense with who I think they are, and who they told me they are. And so who's right, who's wrong? And so I became sick. So each time my father was calling me, which was every month, because we didn't talk for a while, and then we were trying to speak again. I was on the floor for like 4 days, and I couldn't move, and I was thinking I was going to throw up. So, but and at the same time, like working super hard and doing great at my job, and going to the office at 6 a.m. And so I started to see a therapist, because, I was, I don't know, 28, living in Paris, and that was the solution. So I tried, and it was a big awakening for me at the time, because I had to understand that how people behave and the actions that they do are not, a reaction. They are not a response to you. They are not about you. They're about them. So that was, a big thing for me. But that kind of took me on a self-developmental journey, because I was very interested by what I was learning, and I was applying that, and I was seeing how, applying that was helping me also understand my clients better, understand my colleagues better, and eventually manage them better. When I became a manager there. I think I was 27, so I was young to start managing people.
Excellent. And then as you're going through this, that sounds like a great deal of stress. What were some of the practical techniques or just mindset shifts you made? So if our listeners are like, I know exactly what she's talking about, what do you recommend for them to get help, though?
Yeah. I would say the first thing is to realize that, you need some help. And for me, asking for help is the first sign of intelligence. I see a lot of people who are scared or too proud to ask for help. So, this is really something that I want to first demystify. I've been working on myself for 20 years, and I never stop. So it's that. And then it's about having a diagnosis of what really you need help with, help within yourself, and finding the right person. So, I always say, because that's not so helpful, but I'm going to give a bit more here. I've got, I come from the financial industry, so I love models. And so one of the models that, we use to understand the system of individuals is that we are four bodies. We are physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual body. And so those four bodies need to be healthy and aligned together for us to function at our fullest potential. And so the first assessment that you can start to reflect on is what is the rate for each body. Let's say 1 out of 10 is great and 1 is bad. Assess each body, right? How is your mental body? How do you function? How do you make decisions? Are you feeling clear or are you feeling confused? Do you manage to have some distance with your thoughts, right? Or do you find yourself circling in mental loops? All of that, right? It's basically thought mastery and mental health, right? So where are you there? And then we can look at the emotional body, and you can do that in any order, really. The emotional body is how well am I connected with my emotions, right? How well am I equipped to process my feelings? What is my emotional agility? How do I bounce back, if something happens? What's my level of resilience? Is my toolbox good enough? And do I have the support system that I need? So all those questions, right? And basically, am I able to respond to challenges and opportunities in a way that I'm proud of rather than react? So that's also a rate for your emotional body. And then you look at your physical body and basically how healthy are you? How flexible, agile, strong do you feel in your physical body? What's your level of energy? Do you know your physical body, right? Are you educated enough so that you know how to support your physical body to function at its best, right? Again, what's your support system, your doctors or whatever. And then the spiritual body, which is the soul identity. How well are you connected with your soul identity? How well do you know your purpose, right? How well do you understand that everything is interconnected, right? How well do you operate from a union and collaboration consciousness rather than a separation and control domination mindset, right? So make all these assessments, and then for each body, there are specific things to do, specific, practices to work with. But already that is a good diagnostic. And then you can ask yourself, what can I do to level up, right? What can I do to support my mental body, my emotional body, my physical body, and my spiritual body? So that's one point. Do you have some? Because I have another one, so I'll keep it for now.
No, that's perfect. That's what this show's all about. Not just hearing about what you were able to achieve, but how you can encourage us, or at least a starting point of engaging that in our life. And especially with family, like you said, everything intertwines. If you have one part of those four off, all of them suffer in a way. So especially with your family and personal things, and you're so sick from the stress, like you said, you're in bed. So how are you untangling that to heal and thrive on all four levels?
Yeah. This is where self-care is crucial, right? It's and we say working on the selves, it means working, right? So we have to have that commitment first towards ourselves that we are going to do whatever we can, and we don't want to put ourselves in a position where we want to fail or shame or blame ourselves. But, with compassion, how am I going to support myself to honor my potential? So I am dedicated, I am devoted, I am committed to that, right? That's really the first step. And then, it's about finding the tools and the practices and maybe leveling up on each body, with that commitment to growth. How can I level up all of my four bodies, with whom and there it's going to be specific for each individual. Again, of course, there are some different levels of consciousness where we see some similar patterns at similar levels. So, that's another model in a way.
Awesome.
That I can share.
No, thank you so much. So now you're working through these issues, you're killing it at work, you're growing, but you have kind of an imbalance. Where does your life go from there, Marika?
So my life, well, I'm very optimistic. I'm very joyful, and I like to have fun. So I barely go in the victim mentality, and I'm more like the warrior type, and I'm like, okay, how do I make this better, right? So this is a long search and a long quest and research, on what it means to heal, what it means to transform. So aside I was working and I was having the career that I just described. So it was, but I did a lot of work on myself. So I did a lot of therapy. I also did, I explored a lot of things. So I saw a lot of healers. I saw a lot of osteopath, hypnotherapists, psychics, I really explored everything that was available. And I came across fantastic people. I came across people who were not good at what they were doing and knew it or didn't. I came across people who didn't have integrity. I came across people who were highly manipulative and taking advantage of vulnerable people. So that also gave me an idea of the system, right? And this is why I developed actually my own process, because I learned from everything, but also I learned how to create a system of development that would be very pure in terms of empowering people with the right tools to do good things. And having this very clean from distortions that I had seen in the industry. So yeah, I'm a bit lost. So I worked on myself, and as I was working on myself, I opened up, I opened up a lot of transformations within me, and at some point, but I worked with some shamans. I did some. I spent a month in the rainforest in Brazil, so I really explored a lot of healing modalities and transformation modalities. And then in 2012, my company was being restructured and bought fully 100% by Société Générale. And so we had the game of, merger and acquisitions and, who's going to be where. And at the time, my department, equity, they were doing well, and, we were doing what we were asked to do, but we were very small compared to the other organization who were like huge on equities. So in 2012, my boss told me, Marika, your job is dead at the end of the year. But, we love you. So do you want to do this or that? And, yeah, he actually said to me, do you want to be global head of research, which was a very interesting job. And I said, no, I'm actually going to leave the industry, which, I've been contemplating for a year, but it was really hard to make that choice because it's a great job. I like what I do. I've made it so that it's, flexible and I'm making good money. But so I said, I'm going to jump. And so I left and gave myself 2 years to train in, the different modalities that I was attracted to and to see what I was going to do with it, right? And so I trained as an integral coach for a year from a school that's called New Ventures West, that's based in California, that teaches integral coaching, which I think is very interesting because it's not only how do I get from A to B, but also who do I need to become in order to be the person that is at B. So that's, my line of work. Then I trained as a yoga teacher. I trained as a mindfulness teacher. And then I trained in clinical hypnotherapy and also in bioenergetic healing. So, many things, but really to understand those four bodies that are, the mind, the emotions, the emotional, the mental, the physical, and the spiritual, and how to understand all the tools that are needed in order to work with those four bodies. So I did that, and then I started to coach people one-on-one. And I had a lot of clients from the financial industry because I had obviously credibility and authority there. And it's such a specific industry that, if you know how it works, you're just much better to guide people at guiding people in the industry. So I did that, and, I did well. But then 2 years after leaving my job in the financial industry, I left the father of my son, because I realized that it was a toxic relationship. And as I was doing more and more self-work, I realized that, I had to take that into consideration and take action. So I also found myself in a situation where I was like, I need to either make this, something that I can live from, or I need to go back to the financial industry. So I joined some masterminds in the US, which were all about how to teach the coaching industry, the coaching business. It was very interesting because, in the States, it really is a business. It's really a proper industry, and in Australia as well. So I learned all of that, and I learned, how to create some trainings, with cutting edge ways to do it. I learned marketing, but I had everything to learn because I knew a lot about my job in finance, but I didn't know much about, what it means to run a business. So that was a long learning curve, but again, very interesting. And so I started to think about my coaching as a business, and built it with that in mind, and with also in mind, like always the performance and the results that we can provide for clients, but also the scalability and the impact that it can have as it scales. So I have developed different programs, because I quickly realized that we don't learn emotional intelligence. We don't learn systemic intelligence. We don't learn intuitive intelligence at school or nowhere, not even at university, right? But we need to learn that. And so I was also getting bored because I realized that all my one-on-one sessions were teachings, and I was repeating myself. So I was like, I need to, automate this. So then I started those, programs with those trainings and modules. And so I developed a curriculum. So, and the biggest one is the Academy for Conscious Leaders, which is a 3-year program where you go from unconscious leader to conscious leader. But then I did another program aligned for people in professional transition and all of that. And I could see clearly that the clients who were doing the modules were just growing much faster, much better. And they were also understanding the concepts much better. So they were becoming able to teach those concepts, to embody those concepts much better. But still, it was a curriculum. So, I work with high-level executives, and they don't have much time. And so some trainings were really transformative and amazing for them. And some others were like, yeah, that's interesting, but, it's not really what I need, but it's good that I know it, right? So because I'm always, passionate about making things more efficient and more transformative, I was like, I need to find another way to make those teachings really accurate so that you can have it on the situation that you need, at the time that you need, and in the content that you like to consume, I'm looking for the word in English, but I don't get it. It doesn't matter. And so I've created a conscious library to digest the content, like the type of format of content that you can digest, right? Best. And so I've created a conscious library, which is all this, library of this well of knowledge, but that is now accessible in a different way with some very tangible questions that we all have when we want to grow. So they are in the 3 pillars of our IP, which is clarity, presence, and creation. But you find questions such as how to navigate difficult conversations, how to make the right decision, how to prepare for an important meeting, how to improve your resilience, how to release emotional patterns or emotional baggage, also how to forgive. So, there is a lot of content, of transformational content there. And we are now testing that conscious library for organizations. And the idea is to give all employees, and that's really the USP, all employees within an organization access to that product so that they have the tools to grow if they want to. But it's very clear that you have to do the work. You have to invest in yourself. You have to commit to growing. But if you want, the tools are there. So I'm very excited about this because I have seen throughout the last 10 years of mentoring like more than 300 leaders and 5 organizations that at every level within an organization, there are some people who want to grow. And most of the time, we offer solutions for the C-levels where they have one-on-one and it's expensive. And I know because I charge those companies. Then we have the middle management where we know there is a need, but we don't really have a solution because one-on-one is too expensive. So it's like a training here and there, but there is no philosophy, there is no consistency in the pedagogy. And for the rest of the company, there is really not much, right? Maybe a yoga class every month. And I've seen, as you know, I have deployed conscious leaderships in some organization that there is a longing, there is desire, there is a need to grow at every level. And when we, give people the possibility, it's fabulous because they grow. If your company is helping your people to grow, you're such a benevolent company, and that shows in everything, right? But in very tangible results, like it's going to help you attract and retain talents. It's going to help you identify the one who wants to grow and be like, oh, okay, this one or her or she or they want more. So can I hold that space for them, right? It's going to help as well to, unlock the power of inclusion, because diversity not done with inclusion is dangerous. But inclusion is really taking everyone's perspective into account and creating some win-win solutions out of that, right? So that's going to be a tool for that as well. It's going to be a tool to upskill, to reskill, to transform a culture into a conscious culture where we can, seek the truth, we can have the difficult conversations, we can find resolution, and therefore our performance is going to improve. Our P&L is going to improve. There is some data that shows that, the cost of hiding is like 15% in the P&L. So there is a lot of untapped leverage for success when we take care of our people. So I'm excited about this, and we're testing it with a few partnering organizations, and we want to gather some data, some case studies, so that we can scale it with, experience and integrity.
That's excellent. And for some of our listeners around the world who aren't, let's say, in the high-end business sector, P&L is just profit and loss statements. And what Marika was saying is like 16% of hiring is a cost that's just coming right off your profit margins. So you don't have to be a business person to understand.
It's not the cost of hiring. Sorry, it's the cost of hiding.
Oh, hiding.
Yes, right. When we hide, when we don't take responsibility, when we don't communicate, we don't own our mistakes, that's hiding.
Got you. So yeah, so even if you're not in business, this translates to every aspect of all of our lives, correct?
Definitely. And that's the beauty of this work, because and also that's why we retain talents, because people are so grateful that through the growth that they are able to achieve at work, they are also growing and becoming a better human being. So, their social interactions, their familial interactions are going to improve. It's like the butterfly effect.
Yes. So let's ask you this: between your birth and today, on this journey that we went through of your life, is there anything significant we missed before we transition into where is Marika today and where is she heading?
No, I don't think so. I have a son who is going to be 16. Yeah, but that's it.
Nice, beautiful. And juggling any kind of, you have family, you have your professional life, you have all aspects of your life. Like you said, you mentioned 4 major categories. Some people say 7, but either way, it's a juggling act. So as you're going through these major transitions and shifts, not just in your company, but actually your whole career path, what was that like? How did you keep a handle on it at home? And what did you learn the hard way that you recommend to our listeners to get a better balance at home?
Yeah. I learned a lot of things the hard way. But I think, today we live in a world that, is considered VUCA, which is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And that we have to accept that new reality. And we have to really understand that in order to function, to thrive, to perform in that world, we need to change the way we lead. We need to change the way we relate, the way we work, the way we are. And so it's very important to take care of ourselves in that transition. So, self-care, self-work are really, it's a must-have, right? It's not a nice to have. It's almost like a survival instinct. We are transforming. The world is transforming. And so we need to, drive our own car, the car of our transformation. We need to pilot that, right? So, it's about building resilience. And for me, never, as I said before, never going into the victim seat, right? I drive my car, so I know where I'm going. And if I have fuel shortage, it's my problem. I created it, right? And I would say I've been a single mother, for many, many years, and it's a big lesson because you don't have anyone to blame, right? It's like, if it's not done, if it's not working, it's on me. So you really learn to take full responsibility for everything. You can't really go into, well, it's because of this or this or this, and if I don't fix it, it's not going to be fixed. So I think that's key to resilience, because we don't waste energy into that victim zone. And then we start to see, how we co-created this and what we can create to actually make things better. And resilience is a big part of that. So that's why, same as we have those 4 bodies, we have those 4 types of resilience: emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual. And so we have to, build our resilience toolbox. That's super important, so that we can, be agile, that we can pivot, that we can, take on whatever is being thrown at us and still be focused and still, push forward. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is the intuitive intelligence, which is flow, right? Which is something that really has helped me throughout the years. And it's like, if it's meant to be, it will be. And, and it's kind of observing things, right? And not being attached. If something's not working, for me, it's a redirection. So if I have to pivot, I'm being pivoted, but for something better, right? And so there is always this, how can I find the something better? How can I be part of creating the redirection, rather than holding on and being attached to the past or the pain or the grief or the whatever, right? So that's also a big element for me.
Beautiful. So where are you today and where are you heading, so we not only can connect with you, but help you get to your next goal?
Yeah. So now I've got a few objectives. One of them is to continue to share my message and to, level up my visibility and exposure. So, I'm on podcasts, I'm doing some keynotes. So, anything that is sharing the message is relevant to me. And then it's also about demonstrating, what conscious leadership can do, demonstrating what, coming from a mindset of win-win and collaboration can do. Because I see systemic change as, the need for a new system that I don't think will be rebirthed out of the old one, but really more like we need to create a new system. And so, in that space, I think that we need to have the conversations. We need to talk about, amongst people who are actors of systemic change, and see what everyone is doing and see how we can support one another. So that's a big part of what's ahead of me. And also, of course, selling the conscious library and being part of transformating culture through that tool into conscious cultures. And what does it mean for organization in general and the world in general if we have conscious organization that start to think about their impact in everything that they do, in every interactions, and start to, think about those new systems and what are going to be their foundations, there are, rules of engagements. So that's also conversations I'm having. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. So now if someone wanted to get a hold of you and continue the conversation, check out your website, basically
Yeah.
see more of Marika and what you do, what's the best way for them to reach you and what's the website?
So the website is consciousleadership.org, www.consciousleadership.org. On the website, you can contact me, right? So I'm very open and very keen to have some conversations. You can also find a lot of free resources on the website. So if you want to know more about conscious leadership, we have a quiz to assess your level of conscious leadership. It's in the resources tab on the website. There is also a free masterclass to invite you into the concept of conscious success. Then we have a digest every month. So, if you would like to get on our mailing list, you can also do that on the website. You can also find all the podcasts that I've been on the website if you want to hear more of that. And finally, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Marika Messager, or on Instagram. We post every week some, very valuable content around, what is conscious leadership, how do we become a conscious leader, systemic change, and the tools and practices that will help you towards conscious leadership.
Beautiful. Well, we will put links to all that in the show notes. And I think in the notes that I originally received, you had a special offer for our listeners. Does that remind you? Do you want me to mention what was typed in here?
Yeah, can you remind me what was typed?
Yeah, no problem. I know for ladies and gentlemen, just so you know, not only is Marika an amazing woman, professional, super busy, but she's waited patiently over 9 months to be on the show today. So that's why I make sure that what she wrote, that she was kind enough to offer us as a community, we remember to help you, help her, help everybody. So you talked about a free consultation call and you gave your website. And then at the end of the website, it was your name. Is that still correct?
Yeah. So, if this is available and this is what you want, I would suggest that you go on the website and you do the leadership quiz, right? So at the end of the quiz, you have the opportunity to book a call with me so that we can together, see what's your next step. So that's a great way to do it. Otherwise, you can just book a call, but that's more for, let's say, collaborations and partnerships. Otherwise, I would say take the quiz.
Beautiful. Well, Marika, it's been amazing to be with you today. It's been an honor. I know I've personally learned. I know our community's learned. And hopefully, like our slogan says, we don't just listen to great content, but we do it. We repeat each day so we can have a great life in this world and eternity to come. Before we go, though, is there any other thoughts or anything we missed or any other final just ideas you want to share with our audience today?
Yeah, maybe one last thing. What I'm seeing now in the evolution of the collective consciousness is really that we have to open ourselves up to each other, right? So amongst conscious people, people who are actors of change, I'm really seeing in myself, in my life, with my clients, with colleagues and stuff, that it's a moment where we have to come together to understand, what each and every one of us is doing, how we're doing it, and support one another and kind of create a grid of people who are working for the betterment of everything.
Beautiful. Well, it's been an honor and a privilege to meet you. Thank you for being here today. Ladies and gentlemen, don't just listen to this episode, but do it. Contact Marika, continue the conversation, apply it in your own life, and just make the world a better place for God's glory, for your enjoyment, joy, and peace, and to help others grow. So, Marika, again, thank you again today.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, share this with people you love that you know it can help. If you have a leader or someone you're following that's kind of rough, maybe also refer them to Marika, right? So we love you. Have a great day, and we'll see you in the next episode. Ciao.
The Remarkable People Podcast. Check it out. The Remarkable People Podcast. Listen, do, repeat. For life. The Remarkable People Podcast.